coming from an audit background?
To be able to do different things is important.
What would you recommend they should do?
Auditing has taught me a very valuable skill about professional skepticism.
Or how would you advise somebody who's getting into a new role?
With a healthy level of curiosity,
How is being both roles?
I try to understand where you want to be in the future.
Or how would you advise somebody to approach an FP&A interview?
Don't run away from a job, always run to a job.
Hey, hi George. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Before we get into the survey questions, could you just give our listeners and viewers a little bit about your background of your work experience?
Yeah, sure. Started my career auditing in the big four firms. So at that time was big five firms. So started with Arthur Andersen and, got my CPA, CA here in Calgary, Canada, and primarily worked on larger jobs, I would say, in the public space, so public company space, and was there for about 6 years. I was very fortunate in those 6 years that I got to do and see a lot of pretty cool things, even in accounting and auditing and a little bit of tax. And so transitioned out after 6 years, and we can talk about that. So yeah, it's kind of quick background.
So you mentioned you started from audit roles to begin with. How
Yeah,
has been your transition into finance roles from audit roles?
sure.
How what face any challenges or any particular instances you want to share?
Sure. Well, I think for me, what I said was earlier about just being fortunate working in these types of environments is that sometimes being in the right time in the right place to be able to do different things is important. And I think young CPAs, young CAs, how they can do that is when I look back on my career, some of it was luck, but also making sure that being in the right time in the right place, I kind of generated that myself. And that was from a bit of luck, of course, but also making sure that my mentors and bosses and audit partners and all that always knew that I'd be willing to step up and do hard things, complex things. And so when something was difficult, early in my career, right, I had the time and put up my hand to do whatever they needed me to do. And so that evolved from simple projects to very complex financial transactions to IPOs, to spin outs and all that kind of stuff. And so eventually I was able to put myself in the right place at the right time.
It's a combination of identifying opportunities and also being in the right place and the right time and
Yeah,
identify
yeah. I think
that.
what's important is early on in my career when there was difficult things to do or challenges or complex projects, I put my hand up to do it, even though I already had a full audit and full this and full of that. I still volunteered to do some of that harder stuff. And I think eventually that commitment and work ethic paid off because eventually when things were really difficult or complex project, I think I was fortunate enough where they were like, okay, let's give it to George and see what happens, right? And so I put myself in that position. When I transitioned out of the firm and into, most people, when they leave a big audit firm, they go into financial reporting, into accounting. I was fortunate enough where my first role outside of the CPA firm was into operations controller. So right into the business and understanding business KPIs, business metrics, business operating budgets, and all that. And what was important for me when I look back on that transition was that I initially had an opportunity to leave the big four firm as a financial reporting manager. Typical role that you leave, right? You go into financial reporting. But I had a mentor at the firm that was good to me and said, George, that's probably not what you want, because they knew I like the numbers, I like operations, I like understanding the business, I like the finance side of the business. And so I had some good mentors who were very happy that I was with them in the big four firms, but also knew I would not be happy going into financial reporting. And so said no to a couple of those roles. And then when the role that I wanted, like operations controller, popped open, I ran with it and was very happy since. And so that was probably the transition that started me was coming out of the firms into the role that I wanted. And so continue to work hard, continue to perform at a high level in the firm. And then when I was ready to take on a different role into the business, understanding the business, that's when I decided to leave. A colleague of mine has always said, don't run away from a job, always run to a job. And so I was not going to leave the firm until, I felt it was the right move. And of course, I had coaches and mentors that helped me do that too.
So a couple of things, if I can summarize. One, first thing you mentioned was mentors and your seniors, they knew what would be the right path for you.
Yeah, yeah,
That important. And the other
yeah,
thing was the initiative that you took more over and above whatever was required for the
yeah,
role. The
yeah,
combination of two
yeah.
is what led you to a role which you liked, and also your mentors knew about that.
Yeah, I think I had a great relationship with the coaches at the big firms, even though they're your bosses, they're audit partners, and that. I think I can look back and comfortably say is that they know eventually you're going to leave because they have to. They hire like 100 people and only two will stay eventually. So they know that will happen. But they also know that if you're willing to work hard, they will look out for you in the long run. Right. Right.
Any particular skills you feel are important for getting into this finance, FP&A, commercial sort of a role, coming from a audit background?
I think it's what's important is really understanding the business and its operations, and why things happen. And then in the audit world, if you have the opportunity to work on transactions, just from an auditing perspective, you work on transactions, carve outs, spin outs, IPOs, takeovers. Inside those documents, there's always pro formas and budgets and expectations and forecasts. So you have to kind of not necessarily audit those, but you got to look at those and make sure they make sense. So if last year's revenue was 10 million, the pro forma says 40, somebody's got to look at it and say, does that make sense? Right. And so when you're working on that stuff as an auditor who needs to sign off on the public documents, you have an opportunity to do that. And of course, I was always, I'll look at that. I'll look at that schedule. I'll audit that schedule, right? And then you talk to the business owners and the management and say, okay, well, why do you think revenue is going to go up? Why is it going to go down? And you start to build that professional skepticism with a healthy level of curiosity. It's a powerful thing.
Combination of understanding the business and experience from audit and transactions that
Mhm.
helps you get into finance roles.
Yep.
How about somebody who's getting into new FP&A role? What would you recommend they should do in the first few days? So that is the most challenging part of transition months, while you are uncomfortable getting into the new mindset and the new habit of understanding the new role. So how would you approach, if you had to approach today, or how would you advise somebody who's getting into a new role to approach it for the first few weeks, few months?
Yeah, I think I'll sound like a broken record. It's really understanding the business and the underlying, what the data is telling you and what the management wants to say. I think a lot of people can make the mistake earlier in their career where they're their FP&A analyst or something like that, right? And they just overly challenge management and say, this is, you really need to sit down and understand what's going on. Why do they want to communicate this way? And really help them communicate versus just slapping it in the Excel file and sending it off for someone to review. And then someone looking at it going, this doesn't make sense, right? If you can really sit down and say, hey, Asif, you said it's going to be X dollars. It was Y before. Why are you changing? What's different today that was different from yesterday, right? And so, your classic revenues are going up, costs are going down. Somebody's got to look at it and go, is that really what's going to happen? And you do it from a good spot of professional skepticism, but you also do it out of curiosity, genuine curiosity to understand their business, not necessarily say they're wrong and say, okay, I want to understand your business. Help me understand. Why do you think it's going to go up? Why do you think it's going to go down? That level of relationship bonding right away is going to pay massive dividends 2 months later, 3 months later, because you're part of their team. You're part of understanding what they're trying to do.
Makes sense. So again, understanding business, being curious about what's happening with the finance, and also understanding the mindset, which is slightly different from while you were auditing. I think these.
Yeah. Yeah, auditing really, I think auditing, the benefit of auditing, it really creates a very good level of professional skepticism, right? You just get an awareness that says, something's not making sense here. I need to dig deeper, right? You transition to FP&A, you still bring that with you, but now you're part of management. You're part of a team, an internal team. Still use that, but use that with curiosity to say, okay, Asif, you said you're going to generate, revenue is going to go up by 42%. Okay, before I put this in the file and send it to senior management, help me understand how that's going to happen. How are we going to do that, right? Just don't put the number in the spreadsheet and send it off. Really understand the business of why they're going to do that. That way they know you're a partner with them. You're a business partner. Even early in your career, you're a business partner, and let's figure this out together.
So using your skills from audit in FP&A
Mhm.
as a business partner versus earlier you were working with a client and you were auditing their books.
And they expected you to challenge them and say, this doesn't make sense and stuff like that because you're an auditor, right? You got to be independent, right? Well, you're not independent anymore. You're inside the company, right? So work together, still using that skepticism, but use it in a professional manner. Use it with genuine curiosity, understand the business, and see what makes sense. Because when you build that relationship, you start to generate better forecasts, better understanding. You're going, okay, hey, listen, if you think your revenue is going to go up or your costs are going to go down, I don't think putting in a 40% cost reduction makes sense. So let's figure out how we're going to get there. Maybe start with 15, get down to 20, right? Stage it, right? Because everyone knows from here to here overnight doesn't happen,
Makes sense.
right?
Now moving to the next part of the survey, which is more on interview. So how would you approach an FP&A interview, or how would you advise somebody to approach an FP&A interview? Say they have an interview in 2 days. What are
Yeah.
the few things they can do to prepare well for that interview?
Well, I would I would maybe even take a step back further and making sure why are they interviewing? Like why are they there? Why do they want to get into FP&A? Right? If it's, I mean, from my personal opinion, if it's to get a bigger paycheck, then be cautious because it's short-lived. Bigger paychecks are short-lived, right? If you really want to get into FP&A, because you understand, like I have colleagues who are amazing controllers, amazing financial reporting. They know IFRS, they know the accounting rules, and I lean on them to help me understand those rules, right? But I truly wanted to get into operations, the business, financing of the business, treasury, cash management. I really wanted to get into the day to day. If that's what you want to do, that level of enthusiasm will come through the interview, right? And so you got to be really, again, in hindsight, when I look back and go, do it for the right reason. Why are you in that interview, right? Run to a job. Don't run away from a job. And so if you're looking at that and going, how do you prepare? Well, show your financial analytical skills. Read their statements, read their website. How are they growing? What are they doing? Right? Understand some metrics. So if they publish a metric online, make sure you know it and understand what's in there, right? And prepare yourself because that shows that you have that level of capacity to grow into finance and FP&A, right?
So first, making sure that you have the right reason for getting into
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Prepare well. If the answer is yes, then prepare well. What visiting whatever material is available on you.
Yeah, I mean, understand their competitors, like understand what they're trying to do, understand where they're going, what market are they in, right? You're an analyst. You're not going to know everything. Of course not. You could be 25 years old and you don't know it, right? But it's the curiosity to try to learn. When that interviewer sees that, they're going to go, I want him or her on my team.
I know we are about few minutes away from time, so I usually ask this question at the end. So now that you've done both, audit roles and FP&A, and I can sense the answer what's going to come. But
Sure.
what would you reflect looking back at your decision, and how has been both roles comparatively? Which one you found better, if I can ask that?
I think the I think what I do well is I can understand the past
Mhm.
I understand where we are today, and then I try to understand where you want to be in the future.
Mhm.
All my roles have allowed me to tune in those skills very well. Auditing has taught me a very valuable skill about professional skepticism, the past, how it will repeat itself if you don't change, what makes sense, how things balance and they reconcile. Because you'd be surprised, double entry accounting can save you a lot of times, right? Understanding those skill sets, understanding cash, right? Because when you do FP&A, it's a lot of cash flow forecasting. Well, a very good way to prep yourself for that is bank reconciliations, understanding what they are. How does cash clear for revenue, right? And invoicing. All those are great tools in the back of your toolkit. So when you go do cash flow forecasting, they're important. And so I think I am very happy going into finance and accounting, but I'm very, very um, aware and acknowledge the importance of my auditing my first 6 to 8 years. Without a doubt, I wouldn't be where I am today without those. Because I spent a lot of time working with clients, working with CFOs, working with controllers, doing presentations, doing IPOs, doing M&A as an auditor, right? Looking at pro formas. All that has helped me into these roles. I wouldn't
Makes
change it. It got me where I am today. Wouldn't change it.
makes sense. And I have a very similar experience, but we'll not go into that given the time.
Sure.
What we'll do is uh, I wanted to thank you for joining us and sharing your insights,
Of
and
course.
will help a lot of people from the book and from wherever this goes.
Yeah.
Uh, Thank you so much.
Yeah, one thing I would add, we got a couple minutes. One thing I would add, maybe for your readers, is the importance of being as comfortably transparent and open you can with your coaches and mentors at your company or at the Big Four firm or whatever firm you're working for. You're a CPA, you got your designation. You got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable with your coaches and mentors and letting them know where you want to be, where you want to go. Does that mean you're going to work harder? Sorry, work less? No. Does that mean you're going to slack off? No. That means you're going to work harder. Proof, I'm going to go, if you're my manager, Asif, at a Big Four firm, right? And I go to you saying, I don't know if auditing is the long game for me, right? But I will prove to you when I'm here, I will be your best top performer,
Yeah.
right? So then when you see a great opportunity, you're going to help me get there, right? Because ultimately, I know you're going to want me to be happy if you have a good relationship with your manager, right? And so you got to get early in your career to be comfortable, to be as comfortably transparent with your managers as you can. Because, for example, when we did a transaction as an operational controller, I wanted to try something different. I was in the role for 4 or 5 years. I wanted to do something different. The CFO that was going to lead the business going forward, I went to her and said, listen, I don't want to be your operational controller anymore. I would love to be your treasurer going forward, right? But if you want me to be operational controller, you have me. I'll work really hard. But I'd love to be your treasurer. Your next opportunity to be a treasurer. 3 weeks later, I was the treasurer of the new company going forward, right? But she knew it. She knew I would work hard no matter what. But I was comfortable enough to go, and this was earlier in my career, I was comfortable enough to go to her and say, listen, I went to the CFO and said, when the opportunity is there, I would love to go into treasury and be your treasurer. And she made it happen for me.
No, that's a great advice, because if you keep it to yourself, then you limit your chances of making the move. And if
Mhm.
more people know, and the more they are aware of it, and they probably might have a bigger network than you for
Yeah.
sure.
You have to trust it. You have to trust that most people will try to help you. Most will do. 99.9% of the people, even if it's your boss, will always try to help you if you're a strong performer.
All right. Before we let you go, if you could let our listeners, viewers know if they want to reach out to you, what would be the best way, just in case somebody wants to.
Sure. For sure. Anytime people can reach out to me on LinkedIn, it's a good platform. I enjoy it. I think I like watching your guys' material that's on LinkedIn. And so I think it's a great way to connect the network and ask questions and stuff like that. So for sure, if people want to reach out via LinkedIn, not a problem. And of course, yourself, Ash, if there's any questions you have going forward, just reach out.
Thank you so much, George. We'll put the links so that people can reach out wherever we put this video. Thank you so much for joining us
For sure.
today, and wish we'll meet soon, sometime soon.
Yeah, who knows? Hopefully we can.